My old man got me into gaming back when I was a toddler. Things have changed the 30-odd years since then, and I'm not just talking about the graphics. You see, my old man's changed a bit since then. Yep, he died. Back when my old man and I used GameFly, I'd use it to try out games that I'd heard of, but we either didn't have the cash for, or just didn't want to spend all that much on the game itself. One of the highlights of back then was that I got a game a day before it came out. I can't remember what it was, but it was pretty cool to get the experience to play the game before nearly anybody else did. Anyway, it was through Gamefly that I got to play Yakuza 0 for the first time. It was one of the last games that I ever played through the service. The monthly costs just weren't worth it, and since I was working around that time, I just got used games from GameStop for the most part on our monthly trips to the nearby city. We're rural, so nearby is an hour away. I had heard of the Yakuza games from some YouTube channels here and there. The Super Best Friends, for example, though they're no longer best friends, and I don't know if they lost their powers due to the breakup, would play the games on their channel. Most other people try to compare it to the GTA series, which isn't all that correct at all, but I can see why they'd get confused. You see, both of them involve daddy issues and crime in urban environments. Having grown up with wrestling, the overdramatic, oiled-up bisexual men beating the fuck out of each other felt right at home with what I'm used to. Kiryu and Majima ended up feeling more real to me than anything I saw on Mondays. Plus, the promise of more game per game is always something a broke-ass dishwasher wants to hear. What began as just a game to try out became one of my top 10 favorite games ever. The Yakuza series, though now they're going by Like a Dragon now, so that the entire world calls it that, began as an attempt by a man to bring a mature, new game into the world of Sega. The young punk speedster Sonic was good and all, but that hedgehog didn't have the same appeal to middle-aged Japanese men like a middle-aged Japanese man might. After the commercial failures that were Shenmue 1 and 2, Sega wasn't all that keen on trying out another game, and the real world focused on just some dude that wasn't blue and rolling around at the speed of sound. But in the end, the game Yakuza was made, and it turned out to be a money printing machine for the company, with a new protagonist as well as plenty of spin-offs to explore. Not that it's anywhere near Sonic levels, nor that of Persona, for that matter. But that doesn't matter. What does matter is that I have over a dozen of these games to get through, and since the current plan is to play one every 4 games or so, it's gonna take a few years. In that time, we will likely see another mainline title, a couple of spin-offs, as well as that Stranger Than Heaven game I'm really excited for. To begin this massive journey, we have the tale of two Yakuza, both alike in their wacky antics, and how the two of them change over the course of this prequel. Put down your bicycle, grab your takoyaki, and get ready to spill more bodily fluids than you thought you had in you as we find out what it takes to be like a dragon. Yakuza 0 has two protagonists, that being Kazama Kiryu and Goro Majima. I'm going by how we, English speakers, would say their names, but for the longest time I thought that his name was just straight up Kiryu, since even his loved ones call him that. I've heard the odd Kazuma-kun here and there though. Don't get me started though on how his adoptive dad's name is Shintaro Kazama, with an A. Kiryu, who I have to call Crime Dad, is not in his dad era quite yet. He's just some 20-year-old thug that is trying to emulate his own crime dad. I guess our crime grandpa, technically then. Kiryu is wallowing in a small pool when he needs to be chasing his dreams up a waterfall. Unfortunately, that waterfall is turbulent and full of more plot twists than a 7th century monk's attempts at getting kids to pray more often. Who knew that Japanese crime dramas and pretzels had so much in common? Majima, on the other hand, is a bit more experienced. For one, his ink is filled, showing that he's had more experience in his lifetime and is able to make more of a name for himself. His old brother was also involved in a major event recently, and while Majima himself was unpersoned, due to related reasons, he still has some street cred beyond just being the adoptive son of one of the Tojo clan's biggest badasses. The story of Majima in this game is one of regret, love, and trying to survive in an endless void surrounded by little more than greed and gluttony. I'll be covering the characters that most impact these two chuckle fucks, be they father figures or like brothers to them. Starting up, we've got Kiryu's oath brother himself, the koi that wishes to swim alongside his brother Nishiki. Oh, and before I forget, spoilers for this game and basically anything else in existence. If you're sensitive towards spoilers, then maybe don't watch this. What does half the cast and I have in common? We're all orphaned as shit. Dead parents as far as the eye can see. Nishiki and Kiryu are oath brothers, but they're also kinda adopted as well. Growing up in Sunflower Orphanage together, they grew up seeing Kazama as a father figure since he funded the place and was around a lot. However, and I'm not sure if I should include this fun fact here or not yet, but Kazama kinda sorta made all those kids orphans. Which on the one hand is pretty wholesome, on the other hand the dude killed a lot of people, enough to open an orphanage to deal with all the parentless kids he left behind. Meaning that he not only killed the men, but the women too. Hey, at least he's better than Anakin in that regard. Nishiki is sort of the Luigi of the two, the little brotherly type that is seen as kinda dog shit and such gets treated as less capable. We can see that early on, what with the fact that it's Kiryu that was marked for being blamed for the murder of some salaryman in the empty lot and having to deal with the fallout from that. Nishiki might be loud and more hip, but Kiryu is the one that is considered the serious threat. He may know his way around women, know where to drink and eat, but Kiryu knows how to beat 4 dudes unconscious with a bike and then go help a teenager deal with a panty-selling conspiracy. When he's forced to deal with the conspiracy against him, Kiryu over and over again tries to push Nishiki away, not wanting him to get hurt because of his own mess. Kiryu's self-sacrificing is an issue that will crop up time and time again over the series. I'd include footage of that, but I gotta play all those games first, and for now, though, we can see that he's impacting Nishiki by making Nishiki feel small, useless, unimportant. This will come to a head later. After Kiryu ends up getting pinned for the crime, he plans to go rogue, leaving the clan and investigating the case on his own. Holy shit, Kiryu is a detective in this game, kinda. I can't escape it. I can't escaping that feeling of disco. Nishiki wants to help, but Kiryu indeed tells him that this is something he's gotta do on his own. Even their older brother / uncle figure, Kashiwagi, tries to tell Kiryu that his plan is dog shit, but Kiryu is the protagonist, so it's gonna happen. He can slurp his cold noodles as angrily as he wants, but this plot is going to happen. Grand Master Brain Wizard Kazama has foretold of it. On the ride over to the Dojima HQ to get himself kicked out, the two reminisce about how Kazama beat the shit out of them for wanting to be career criminals. The two of them thought of this independently of each other, showing their bond and their fondness for having the shit kicked out of themselves. Leaving behind his brother, Kiryu fucks off to go and eventually beat the shit out of dozens of dudes. Nishiki goes back to Kazama HQ and waits for Kiryu to come back with the news that he successfully got fired from crime. This takes a while because Kiryu has a meeting with a cyborg, but once Kiryu does come back, he tells Nishiki that he can't hang out with him and Big Bro Kashiwagi anymore at their clubhouse because he's jobless and unpopular. So instead they go and hang out at Kiryu's house because, despite Kiryu's insistence that Nishiki needs to avoid him because he's so unpopular and without gainful employment. At Kiryu's shit shack, they talk about the plot some more, drink some beer, and show that Kiryu is the embodiment of a single heterosexual man despite all the oiled-up man-on-man action and crying while hugging that he gets engaged in. After some bullshit with the cyborg and a sex trafficker, Kiryu has Nishiki help him acquire drip since Kiryu's sense of fashion is more square than fucking SpongeBob. This interrupts Nishiki's time playing with balls, but he won't skip on the chance to rag on his homeboy sense of taste. Damn, Kiryu, you got COVID 35 years early, huh? Kiryu fucks off with his new drip and leaves Nishiki behind to go work his day job. Later finding him at a bar, on accident, while trying to meet up with his favorite human trafficker. Unfortunately, said trafficker of flesh ends up being touched by a strange man himself. Nishiki ends up getting his nose busted in for asking questions and has to watch as his sworn brother has to go and be a badass while he gushes like a schoolgirl in the worst way possible. To Kiryu's credit, he does start the fight by punching a dude that badmouths his brother, showing that even if he unintentionally hurts Nishiki's fragile ego, he still loves that United Healthcare CEO killing two-bit gangster brother of his. Wahoo! The turtleneck-wearing golf enthusiast from Clan Dojima also says that he'll have Nishiki fucked up, adding to Kiryu's desire to not let his brother be harmed by his quest for justice. This only deepens the space between them. Every part of this conspiracy is threatening to end not just his own life, but those of all of his loved ones too. Good thing Kiryu doesn't own any pet dogs or orphans yet. It'd really suck if they were targeted as well. Once Kiryu heads back inside, Nishiki implores him to not do protagonist shit, but Kiryu insists that he has to do this alone, and is gonna go nab Kuze. His section is up next, so don't worry, and Kiryu's gonna clear his name by doing that kidnapping. He fucks off and leaves his best friend and mama of the establishment behind. Mama's being like the caretaker of the place. Generally the owner, from what I can tell, sort of like the mother hen to the dipshit chicks that she babysits while they plot crimes around her. The next time we see Nishiki, he and Kashiwagi are told that they need to assist in the hunt for Kiryu now the Dojima clan has gone full apeshit that Kiryu, a real estate agent, has been a thorn in their side for too long. Too long being like 2 or 3 days, but still. His brother and Brunkle don't want to do it, but because of bullshit rules of honor and conduct, they gotta go help hunt down the autistic icon himself. The next time we see our little bro, he pulls up in his whip right after Kiryu saw a woman get murdered in cold blood due to a negotiation gone wrong. The two of them get out of the city and head up into the mountains to escape the blood hunt called on Kiryu. Damn, man, you sire a new fledgling or some shit? Oh wait, wrong universe. Think he'd be Bruja? He feels kind of Bruja to me, or maybe like a less shitty Ventru. Anyway, Kiryu did once again pull the I gotta do this on my own, because he's such a fucking single-player protagonist and has this fucked up notion of self-worth. Honestly, it can hurt watching these dudes suffer like this. Nishiki doesn't make it much better, because once up on the mountain, he offers him a smoke and a poke. And by poke, I mean a 9mm round through his skull.
そいつがお前の最後の一服だ。何の真似だ。悪ふざけにしちゃたちが悪すぎねえか。なあ兄弟、いい加減にしろって。うるせえ。もうこうするしかねえんだよ。なんでこうなっちまったんだろうな。どっから歯車がずれた。組の命令ってことなのか、錦。そんなんじゃねえ。ん？桐生。お前、組の制裁で殺される人間がどういう目に遭うか知ってるか。堂島組ってとこは見せしめの死体を作る天才だぜ。人間がどの程度痛めつければ死ぬのかよく知ってる。それをとことん死なねえように殺すんだ。生かしたまんま。できるだけ長く苦しむようにだ。生きたまま解剖されるような拷問されて散々痛めつけられた挙句、そして後になって見つかった死体はもう人間と呼べるようなもんじゃねえ。俺はな、桐生、兄弟としておめえにそんな死に方させられねえよ。堂島組に的にかけられるってのはそういうことなんだ。桐生、組織に目つけられて逃げ切ることはできねえ。極道には時効もねえ。お前も分かってるはずだ。こうなっちまった以上、俺も極道としてはもうおしまいだ。風間のおやつさんもな。けどせめて おめえがひでえ死に方するのだけは避けられる。人思いに死なせてやれる。今俺にできんのはそれくらいしか。
すまねえ兄弟、お前にここまでさせちまったのは俺のせいなんだな。兄弟、頼みがある。俺をここで弾いたら俺の首を手柄にしていつか組でてっぺん取ってくれ。約束してくれ。頼んだぜ。
なんだよこっちみんな見んじゃねえよキリュウ、頼むから。
情けねえこと言うんじゃねえ。そんなんじゃてっぺん取れねえぞ。どうした？しっかり狙えよ。まだ死んでねえぞ。
撃てねえよ。撃てるわけねえよ。やっぱり俺はおめえと一緒じゃなきゃダメだ。国道として。俺なんか今まで生きてこられたのもおめえがそばにいたからだ。俺はおめえが一緒じゃなきゃ何やっても半端で意味がねえんだよ。
俺だって同じさ。
キリュウ、
お互いまだガキだってことだ。つまらねえ火種つけちまって、世話になったおやっさんにも迷惑かけて、それで死んで片付けちまおうなんてよ。極道がどうとか言う前に結局俺は半端なガキでしかねえ。
俺だって人思いに死なせてやるなんて言い切ったくせにマジでダセえよ。
だよな。でもいつまでもガキじゃいられね
キリュウ、やっぱり二人で何とかして。
え。錦、今日ここであったことは全部忘れろ。俺も忘れる。俺は行くぜ。
どうするつもりなんだ。
カムロ町に戻る。俺にはまだやらなきゃならねえことがあるんだ。
ダメだってキリュウ、おめえ本当に殺されちまうよ。
いや、お前にもらった命だ。これでどこまでやれんのかこの目で確かめてやる。
キリュウ、
錦、まず俺からけ締めつけさせてくれ。お前とはこれまでだ。今日限り兄弟の縁を切らせてもらう。
キリュウ、
こっから先お前は二度と俺に関わるな。
Kiryu breaks off from him entirely and leaves him up on that mountain. Nishiki, according to some content, almost fucking died up there. It's the middle of December, and Kiryu left him potentially hours of walking away from any hint of civilization. Motherfucker, it snows up there. Nishiki may have been left to die, but then again, he did go up there with the intent to blast the brains of his better half all over the trees. But here we see that Nishiki feels that he is utterly worthless without Kiryu, that he'd just be dead without him. They both suffer being orphans from a culture that does not look highly upon them, both ending up with complexes that will haunt them for the rest of their lives. The next time we hear about the man left to die on the mountain is from Reina, the mama from earlier, who lets Kiryu know that he's back in town and upset. Kiryu gives Reina a memento for Nishiki, a watch that has a photo of them and their adoptive father in it. He still says that he wants no harm to come to his brother, and that if he dies, Nishiki isn't to try to avenge him. A lot of things transpire before Nishiki pops back into the story, but upon leaving a homeless camp, Kiryu encounters some goons sent for him before Nishiki also finds him. Tells him that Tachibana, his real estate boss, has been captured and is being tortured. The two work together to deal with this overall issue by finally having Nishiki tell Kiryu to go fuck himself with his protagonist complex and have a cool shirts-off fight against the goons, which they do. After the sweaty men make quick work of the less sweaty men, Nishiki and Kiryu bond over just how badass they are before heading to go hang out with a blind woman and a hobo, where Nishiki gets more sick lore drops. This is because, due to being a playable soap opera, families torn apart by racism and kept from each other by the worst game of hide-and-seek ever has infected the plot so deeply that Nishiki has basically missed a season of a show and is trying to keep up with all of it. Nishiki even points out how wild all this shit is, and man, even I struggle with the plot sometimes. Mostly in how the sequence of events happen off-screen, or how Makoto never once heard Majima's name somehow? But that's an issue for later. After promising to bring back the blind girl cyborg brother, Kiryu gets a page from the oldest Chinese man in Japan. Nishiki and Kiryu head out to go and try and call him via payphone as Nishiki rambles about how their crime dad likely planned for the siblings to reunite, and what daddy wants to happen will happen. Upon calling Elder Chen, he then just repeats the info to Nishiki before they storm a building being used to commit hate crimes against a half-breed orphan. As the orphan is sat there, dying, the two bust into the room and then go apeshit on the king of hell himself, Kuze. He's the gift that keeps on giving, with all the times that Kiryu has to beat the fuck out of him.
How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man?
Tachibana, the mostly dead man, is in no condition to stand on his own power, so Nishiki is sent out to go get his sister, reuniting with her too late to have them reunite while her brother still draws breath. The two of them, brothers in their own ways, let her have her time with her brother's corpse, as the men responsible for her brother's death continue to plot against her to acquire the land that they are standing on right now. Nishiki is seen later at Serena, where Majima is looking for him due to plot reasons. The two duke it out because Nishiki doesn't want to bring up Makoto's location. He puts up a decent fight, but he's not dragon material. Not dissimilar to how Tony Soprano never had the makings of a varsity athlete, Nishiki just can't seem to catch up. He does give Majima the lowdown on the lower dumps, with his chin freshly coated in such heavy loads. Majima takes off with the intent to try and find the blind woman at the center of this tragedy, while Nishiki is let to recover from having his ass beat from a man in a tuxedo. Kiryu and Nishiki later meet up at the empty lot, not knowing where Makoto is, despite the best of Chinese expats trying to track her down. The Koi boy brings up Majima, teasing us once again about the eventual dramatic meeting between Kiryu and Majima, but Kiryu only vaguely knows of him and doesn't trust him enough to want to work with him until they find Makoto. He then gets a page from an unknown number. He fucks off to go answer it, leaving Nishiki at the empty lot. Later on, Kiryu heads back to the homeless camp, and Nishiki finds him before Kiryu could find him. If only the siblings were this good at sibling-to-sibling mental communication. But I guess that's only available if you're gay enough, and unfortunately Tachibana never caught on that his best friend wanted to fuck sloppy style, and Makoto seems to be a disgusting heterosexual. Nishiki tells Kiryu that the war is on. Dojima is making moves on the Kazama family HQ. Nishiki suggests doing the non-protagonist option of just leaving the city in hiding, but thankfully some goons show up to instigate shit with the protagonist. Kiryu explains that Makoto is alive and in the hands of a man named Sarah, who is best buddies with their daddy, and that they just gotta stall for time while the adults deal with this shit. Kiryu stays back and does what he does best to the thugs, while Nishiki is to run back to HQ and tell Kashiwagi to go on the defensive. After Kiryu beats the fuck out of Kuze for the 5th fucking time, Nishiki runs on out of the HQ and tells Kiryu that the Dojima family forces are moving on the yacht that holds Makoto. The two of them have to go to the harbor where the grand finale finally begins. A small army of goons, headed by the new captain of the Dojima family, begin to lay siege to the vessel before the two brothers rock up in Nishiki's whip. Nishiki brings up the numbers, not knowing if they can handle all these men. Kiryu is used to fisting large groups of men by himself, and upon seeing the leader of the soon-to-be fisted men, he demands that Shibusawa stops. His men get between the two, and a fight is about to begin as Bronco Kashiwagi shows up with the cavalry in the form of 2 big-ass trucks loaded with even more dudes, including a couple of Molotovs. Now that the righteous path is clear, Nishiki and Kiryu can begin the Tokyo Fisting Festival of 1988. The two fight across the ship until eventually getting pinned down by like 3 dudes with pistols. Mind you, Kiryu then has to go on and deal with yet more dudes with pistols, just showing that Nishiki, yet again, is not enough of a protagonist to be able to fight proper boss fights. It's not enough that he lost to a Cyclops that canonically led to the crash of Japan's economy. However, Nishiki does show up in the nick of time to save Kiryu from becoming a killer. You'll see later on why this is laughable, but Nishiki points out that killing him is bad for reasons. And yeah, I guess killing a dude that's not really a threat anymore is bad, but he promises that if they're gonna kill one day, that they're gonna kill together. Such brotherly bonding. I'm guessing that reality would catch up and Kiryu would go to prison, which I know, wild concept, because both Shibusawa and Kuze end up going to prison off-screen. Speaking of off-screen, they later hook up at Serena's bar so that Nishiki can dog on his dog one last time. Kiryu has new drip, his classic look of a dark red shirt underneath a light gray suit. Kiryu is also signing back on with the Dojima family. Pesky continuity and his misaimed sense of armor are to blame for that. Kiryu explains that he needs to make things right, and that over the course of the most exciting week of his life, so far, he met a lot of people with strong convictions and wants to be like them. Being able to leave the shadow that is cast on him by Crime Daddy Kazama, he'd be able to be a Yakuza of his own. The suit being the focus then, his first real choice for himself, besides all of the times I had him choose to help random people. Kind of like how our cowboy Arthur Morgan kept saying he was a bad man. I'm not about to let predetermined characterization get in the way of me helping random people in a video game. As global temperatures rise in the real world to the point that in 25 years from now, I'll be living in a swamp-ass breadbasket, and everything south of Detroit is going to look like a hellscape. More so than it already does. I am not sorry for offending everybody from Ohio. Nishiki admits defeat and tells Kiryu that they're gonna go eat some food to make up for what he owes him. Kiryu saying he doesn't have much cash on him, despite me making him a multi-billionaire by the end of the game. Man doesn't want to spread the wealth around. I guess at this point in his life, it isn't infinite yet. Nishiki is Kiryu's brother. By oath, by adoption, and through fighting alongside each other, they've bound to end up with some of their juices mixing inside of each other. My own relationship with my blood-related half-sibling is complicated. I've always been more comfortable with cousins or people that are like cousins to me. Cousin-themed friends. For Kiryu, Nishiki is somebody to protect and love, even if that protection belittles and that love can at times smother. I get it, a desire to prevent others from suffering runs deep in me too. But at times we need to let others help us. Unfortunately, Kiryu struggles with that will remain for decades, in-game at least. Also, technically, I guess, almost decades in real life, because the games kind of have a release schedule that's, like, comparable to the passage of time in real life. But that's, like, not exactly 2 decades. So just a decade and change. Thankfully, by his most recent appearance, though, he finally learns to seek help from others. But it's mostly because he's got so much fucking cancer inside of him that his hair makes him look like a shitty J-pop star. Through their bond and how Nishiki treats him, he helps Kiryu to unwind. Kiryu's bound up like a slinky that's been fucked with by a gaggle of toddlers. Nishiki gives him that time and space to relax. He also gets him to consider the world around him beyond just how he can apply his fists to it. Eating out, be it food or women, are important for a growing future crime dad. The kindnesses that Kiryu displays in the future can be traced back to how Nishiki treats him as an actual brother outside of their criminal lifestyle. Behind the glitz and glamour is a man that wants to enjoy life with the man closest to him since they were both pants-wetting little shits living in an orphanage together. He also acts as a model and a warning regarding ambition and politics in the Yakuza. Nishiki will one day be as hungry as Shimano and Dojima are, lusting for the prestige and power that those men possess, and Kiryu would be able to attain just by being himself. He knows that he can't be a legend like his own brother, and because of this, he tries to play the game. Get up in the family by kissing ass and manipulating people socially, while Kiryu simply just makes problems stop being problems. By watching his little bro Kiryu does learn a degree of political maneuvering, needed when that empty lot blossoms into a grand tower for all to see. As below, so above in this situation. The cracks in their relationship show in this game, cracks that will widen with time, with silent resentment that Kiryu is too spectrum power to realize even exist. For all his heroism, for all his do-gooding, he can't see that he needs to understand his brother. Maybe that's why he laughed off a sex slave getting into a relationship with her abuser in a story because of funny pizza shenanigans. Or it's just poor writing cohesion. This is something that comes to a head later on, though. But this game helps show that Kiryu will need to learn to foster relationships with others, becoming the lovable crime dad we all know and love today. While Nishiki is almost like a big brother in regards to clan politics and how to be Yakuza in that regard, when the push comes to shove, Nishiki can't quite push it all out. Kiryu is there to help him with the relief that he needs, though. This helps to show the early stages of the mentor figure, daddy, and drinking buddy that Kiryu will become one day after losing oath brother after oath brother. It's almost comical how many times motherfuckers want to be Aniki with Kiryu and they just end up like Disco. Dad is shit, but somehow constantly haunting us with their presence. In the end, Nishiki is a lesson to be learned for Kiryu. A painful one. One that we never hope to learn. That no matter how much we love somebody, no matter how much time we spend by their sides, if we don't truly understand them, and they understand us, then we will end up losing them one day. Hell is other people. I've heard this over and over, right? And often people don't get what it means. It means that our judgments of ourselves tend to be based on our perception by others, or our perceived perceptions from others. But in a way, our punishments are largely external, and no character other than Kuze represents a punishing individual that tests the resolve and strength of Kiryu. His back is adorned with Enma, the king of hell, the judge of souls that enter the underworld. The world of crime is often called the underworld, and it's fitting for this former boxer, a man that tests the mettle of the junior Yakuza that is stuck in the middle of this miasma of suffering. We first meet him during Kiryu's tribunal held by the lieutenants of the Dojima clan, himself being one of them. He's more of a blunt instrument than a machinator of any sort. His approach to the conspiracy is the most straightforward and lacking in finesse. I'm a guess that he was a heavyweight sword and not one for dodging the blows in the ring. When Kiryu tries to plead his innocence, Kuze tells him to get fucked, cut his pinky off, and then turn himself in to the police. All this to get Kazama kicked out of the clan for having brought Kiryu in, which would indeed ensure that the lieutenants can squabble over his empty seat. When Kiryu tries to find the loan shark that got him to beat down the man that ended up dead in the empty lot, he ends up having Kuze show up to ruin things once again. Kuze insists that Kiryu betrays his darling daddy, but Kiryu won't have any of that shit. No bribery is enough to sway the fledgling worm who heads out to meet with Nishiki, leaving Kuze in his office to stew. At the meeting with Nishiki and Kashiwagi, Kiryu thinks that he can just leave the clan and beat the shit out of Kuze, which they both think is a dumb as fuck plan. The next time we see Kuze, Kiryu indeed tries to implement this plan, getting himself kicked out on a technicality, and then beginning his beatdown of every man between him and Kuze, including this weaselly bitch that keeps coming back for more beatdowns. This culminates in the man's defenestration and implausible survival. Not that the Yakuza series is consistent about if gravity is a deadly force or not. Upon finding the lieutenant, Kiryu and he do battle, with Kuze losing and then his boss showing up with the other two LTs in tow. They snitch on Kuze about accidentally kicking Kiryu out with no permission, leading to Kuze losing a chunk of his pinky. My, how the tables have turned. At least he gets to do it on a cool little pinky-cutting platter. Shit sounded like a carrot being bitten into, which, fun fact, roughly the same amount of bite strength is needed to break through a carrot as it is to break through a finger. Good to know if you ever need to de-digit somebody that's got your mouth covered. Just think of their finger as a carrot. Kuze stumbles off having lost a little bit of weight, only to return in a cutscene where his role as point man on the operation has been handed to Awano, after Kiryu learns from Tachibana that Kuze has no ties to the killing and therefore, most likely, just tried to scramble for power and tripped over his own overinflated ego. Normally, that doesn't make you lose a pinky, but Kuze is a little bit extra in that regard. But he does get first dibs on Kiryu, seeing him as his target of enmity. Kiryu eventually finds himself in the sewers and finds out just how extra this bozo really is. Motherfucker goes Akira on his ass, drives a bike down the sewer tunnel, and engages with the future Dragon of Dojima in a friendly bout of sewer wrestling. Of course, I'd grinded outside content and had the secret martial art of White Vape Cloud to empower me enough to beat the fuck out of him, rendering the fight more of a speed bump on my journey through the cutscenes that give Kojima a run for his money. Despite his tenacity, he falls victim to poorly placed unlocks. Kiryu fucks off and doesn't finish the loser off, leaving him to once again seethe with anger, but this time covered in piss and shit. But hey, Kiryu didn't choose the locale this time. Kuze is the one that risked getting soaked in Tokyo's finest filth. He's next encountered when Kiryu left Sarana, the 3 LTs waiting for him, with Kuze getting to be the one to beat on him. But once again he falls in short order, not just because I pulled a shotgun at him and is lucky since I wanted this to be a one-on-one fight, but also because, once again, the powers of grinding in Japanese games matters far more than player skill. Once defeated, one of his bitch boys hits Kiryu from behind. Kuze is set up to kill him before Tachibana drives right into the failure of a king. Though because he do be built different, this doesn't actually kill the man. He and Owano are left seething, while Shibusawa remains calm and cool, as if he's got something up his well-tailored sleeves. We return to the scene of Tachibana's death, Kuze having had his weasel bitch boy working him over rather unsuccessfully. He decides that it's best to not just use pain, but Tachibana uses the chance to egg the weasel into delivering a fatal blow, which causes the man's own near instantaneous death when Kuze slams his head into the floor. Kiryu and Nishiki catch up with him not long after. Kuze's limp dick apology isn't enough for Kiryu, and so once again Kuze gets a beating. He goes unconscious, and while he's out, Tachibana lets Kiryu know that he reverse interrogated Kuze, classic move, and learned that Dojima is behind all of this shit to get rid of Kazama. Once Kuze stops napping after his ass kicking, he bitches and whines about the clan and how there's a traitor, but Kiryu's fuckfields lay barren. And he tells him that if any of the Tojo clan lays a finger on Makoto, that he'll crush the damn clan himself. Kuze can't help but see the boy, fitting in well as the member of the Yakuza now, no longer just some punk, as Kiryu leaves with the corpse of Makoto's brother. His next appearance is at a meeting between Dojima and Makoto. She wishes to trade the empty plot in exchange for the heads of the LTs, which, of course, doesn't happen, but in the entire deal-making process, he just seethes alongside Wano because Shibusawa is the new favorite son of Dojima. He departs with the others after Makoto is shot, boarding the helicopter as Majima has to deal with the wounded woman and the men that stand between them. The last appearance of the most beaten man in the city is when Kiryu is on his way back to support the Kazama HQ during the siege by the Dojima family. But he finds just Kuze standing there, street clear so that they can finally duke it out like the evil apes that they are. He's waiting to start the assault on the HQ until either he or Kiryu were the last one to remain standing. And with that, Kuze tells him that Dojima plans on full cleaning of house, taking over the Tojo and wiping out all families that stand between Dojima and total control. Either Kuze or Kiryu's pride will be beaten out of them as the two men meet in a clash of fists. Kiryu, of course, wins, casting final judgment on the judge himself. Kuze sees the dragon in the flesh of the young man, what Kuze sees in him. Why Kiryu is worth over 1 billion yen. But there's another man that seeks to be like a dragon, Shibusawa, who seeks to gain dominance and prestige by taking out all that Kazama holds dear, cementing him as the true right hand of the tyrant known as Sohei Dojima. He's gone behind his back, had Makoto shot non-lethally, so that he could use her as bait. He tracked the movements to spirit her away, and has the vessel in his sights. Kiryu leaves after a word of warning from Kuze that he'd be entering the blackest pit of hell dealing with this. But Kiryu is ready to brave any torrents that come in the river that he has chosen for himself, with the closest thing that the King of Hell has for a blessing passed on to him. Kiryu takes off with Nishiki, leaving Kuze to eventually turn himself into the police. His story of this game is from a side game I have no intention of ever playing, so I'll stick to his character in the game. I won't lie, he's a tough cunt. Emphasis on the cunt, though. He's a part of the system, an enforcer of the tactless violence that permeates the lifestyle that they all signed up for. What a little honor he does have only manifests way too late, either due to inflexibility or cowardice. But he was a whetstone from which Kiryu could sharpen himself, steel his resolve, and learn to never, ever give up, even when it's a good idea. In a way, he reminds me of Malakath, a tester of faith, of ability for the Dunmer people. I know you likely didn't expect to hear Elder Scrolls lore in this video, but guess what, Sugar Tits? Those games and I share birth month and year. Unfortunately, both of us got beaten out by one of Canada's golden children, Justin Bieber. I can't not talk about the Elder Scrolls. It's in my DNA. Just like finishing side content before the main game is. Contrasting the fire and war that was Kuze is a man that helped guide Kiryu in more subtle ways. A man that knew loss. Loss of a hand, loss of a sister, loss of self. Tachibana was a half-breed, his parents being a Japanese man and a Chinese woman. For this he was discriminated against and forced to become strong in order to survive. But over time he learned that there was more to life than just having a pulse. He needed more to make it worthwhile, and even though he ended up dying to ensure her safety, his love for his sister made him truly feel alive. Kiryu met the 25-year-old real estate tycoon on the rainy streets of Kamurocho right after he had been exiled from the Dojima family. Dejected and without direction, Kiryu fell to his knees in the middle of the street. A man holding an umbrella approached him, offering him a gloved hand before inviting him up into his penthouse to speak further. There, Kiryu would find out that Tachibana knew a good deal about him. After letting him shower and offering him food, Tachibana explains how Kazama was connected to the grander scheme of things. That if any of the three LTs get that empty lot, they will be able to remove Kazama from his position, which neither he nor Kiryu want to happen. He wishes to have the lot for himself, wanting to work with Kiryu to make that happen. Kiryu leaves, not yet ready to work with him, but he does take his business card with him before doing so. Through some street-level detective work, Kiryu finds out that just how capable Tachibana and his real estate firm really are. They are going toe-to-toe with the Tojo clan in nearly every opportunity and coming out on top. Be it bribery, blackmail, or violence, they've gained a solid foothold in the city. Kiryu eventually meets Tachibana's second command, a man named Oda, who shows off the darker side of how the firm operates, though there are hints that Oda has done some of the work in a less than ideal manner for Tachibana's tastes. The next on-screen appearance of the cyborg is after Oda tests Kiryu in a fight. Tachibana couldn't bring Kiryu into the fold unless his second command trusted him. Trust and secrecy are things vital to his operations. He's earned the trust of the locals in the Champion District through helping keep the Tojo out. Overall, Tachibana is a splotch of gray in a largely black-soaked region of the city. Now that Kiryu can be trusted, Tachibana is willing to spill all of his beans, and this man's got the British diet level of beans to share. Turns out that Kazama predicted everything that's happened the last few days to Kiryu, his partnership with Tachibana being an insurance plan of sorts, as well as a way to work towards a larger goal that is still unknown to the one-handed real estate agent. During this entire process, Tachi helps Kiryu to get an idea of how much power he currently holds in an overdramatic fashion.
なんだと。
金は力。私は自分の力がこの先どこまで登場界に迫れるか試してみたい。ですがまだまだでしてね。今の私ではせいぜい10秒というところが限界ですが、いずれは殻の一粒を手に入れてカムロ町の支配者層に食い込むつもりです。あの土地はそれだけの価値を生みます。
あんたは一体。
With everything he's seen, Kiryu decides to finally get legal employment and joins up with the real estate firm. Tachi has Kiryu go off to work with Oda on a job. Some rival squatter situation is fucking with an ally of theirs. The dude is paying the firm to deal with the problem. Unfortunately, it's all connected to the Yakuza. They hired this man to extort money out of the old dude that both owns and manages the building. Kiryu deals with the Yakuza, which has ramifications down the line, namely the scene where Owano showed up to Serena and busted Nishiki's face into the bar. During that confrontation, Wano did guess that Kazama is behind the Tachi situation, and that Tachibana still hadn't found the owner of the empty lot. Kiryu refuses to give up Tachi. Wano fucks off before Oda suspects that Kiryu might agree to the deal and sell out Tachi, calling him to tell him to go into hiding. Oda really is just a cunt, isn't he? While on his way home to get some shut-eye after getting into more fistfights than a frat boy from Boston during St. Patrick's Day, he heads on over to the empty lot to ruminate. Unfortunately, there's a cyborg waiting for him there to trap him into a cutscene. In it, Tachi explains that he didn't think the Dojima family would move this fast. He still believes that the situation is manageable, though. It's manageable in the same way that a bar during a major holiday is. You're surrounded by hostile forces on all sides, and you gotta shout orders and hope that they get carried out without too many messes being made. The next time Tachibana is brought up is when Wano tries to bribe Kiryu with a fat stack of cash. But since I'm part of a real estate empire with myself as the president of it, I have no need for Wano's broke bitch dollars. He doesn't like this and shoots a woman to death, something that Kiryu doesn't consider be very cash money, but doesn't seem to give enough of a shit to pick a fight with the golf-playing prick. Tachi next makes a grand appearance by crashing his car through Kuze, showing that even Ubermenches can suck ass at things. He's there as the second worst getaway driver that Kiryu has during the game, and as his kidneys begin to fail him, the first worst getaway driver shows up in a shitty van to spirit the two away. Before that, though, they have a conversation about how, like I said, he's having issues relaying orders due to being surrounded by enemies on all sides. Kiryu finally realizes that he needs to let his friends help him, and that this protagonist mindset he has won't get him too far, since the story is no longer just a fun beat-em-up. He's had to fight a middle-aged man in the sewers. Dignity and honor are no longer on the menu. 86 that shit. Tachi, meanwhile, advocates being a sociopath and manipulates and uses those around you, because the environment he grew up in, the grind set that he has today, is rooted in a horrible upbringing. Still, though, the polite pugilist expresses a desire to have friends like Kiryu, showing signs that he, too, could have been a standard protagonist if he'd only been shown love and not massive kidney failure induced by blood loss. He knows that he can trust Kiryu with his life, even if he himself is still too distant to be willing to risk his own life. Kiryu is rubbing off on him, and I don't mean the kind that involves being stuck on a passenger train surrounded by salarymen that don't know how the tender touch of a woman. But as Oda ruins both his eventual demise and the tender moment, we are then whisked away to Little Asia, which at this moment just feels like Chinatown, but with a different name. I think we only meet Chinese immigrants there. While Tachibana recovers in a back alley doctor's bed, our favorite human trafficker explains why Tachi can no longer give two-handed employments. They both ran in a gang. Tachi got ambushed, which left his hand so fucked up they had to remove it. Like a coward, he didn't keep his bones to turn into a cool necklace, however, so point reduction from his badass rank for that. Imagine keeping your skeletal hand as a necklace. That'd be dope as shit and send only the right messages during high society business meetings. Because of his injuries and blood loss, his kidneys work about as well as a nepo baby in any real job, and because of that, he's actually a vampire that needs blood every couple of days. See, he's a cyborg that drinks blood to stay alive. His tattoo of a bat is especially fitting. After negotiations with the city's oldest Chinese man go less than stellar, our second favorite half-breed vampire, second only because Alucard is considerably more fuckable, shows up to explain that the ancient man will not change his mind and that they gotta get the fuck out of there. Tachibana suggests that Kiryu goes and become a hobo to survive away from the Dojima family's blood hunt, having had his apartment firebombed by some goons not too long ago. Kiryu agrees to be homeless and they part ways. After he stays the night, and in the process beats the fuck out of some teenagers that hunt hobos for fun, Kiryu is picked up by his worst getaway driver so that he can drive him somewhere cryptic. Thankfully, it's not long before it's revealed to be Tojo Clan's HQ, a big, fuck-off, traditional-looking building that over the series, Kiryu will have to fight his way through multiple times. Hopefully the groundskeepers are paid well for how often they gotta clean up blood and broken statues. Tachi is working the case of, does Kiryu get to live unmolested by Sohei Dojima, and in doing so, we learn that the acting second chairman of the clan admires Kiryu's Kazama-like qualities. Playing into this, Tachi offers a billion yen, 30% of his business profits, and another billion once it's proven that Dojo has been brought to heel to call off the blood hunt. He explained that on top of Dojima ending up in control of the Tojo clan being a bad thing, Kiryu is indeed worth enough money to bludgeon an entire room's worth of men to death with. Of course, at this point, I've been making over 1 billion yen every time I made a collections run for all the properties I manage, which is another point of conflict between story and gameplay. Like, no matter how much money Nico Bellic gets in GTA 4, the story still acts like he and Roman are in dire straits and need to keep the story going as is. But the deal is made, and on their way out, an unspoken agreement must be fulfilled. Kiryu, Tachi, and Fuckface must prove that they are indeed worth keeping alive. Weak allies are not worth keeping. And in proving themselves, they beat their way through the HQ and back to the rinky-dink van before leaving as the man in the chair talks about how badass Kiryu might one day become.
Kiryu Kazama ka. Ano Kazama ga 目をかけただけのことはある。あれもいつか化ける男なのかもしれねえな。
The terrible trio hang out at the pier, where Tachi stares wistfully at the ocean before explaining that somebody has found the location of the empty lot owner ahead of them. They need to move fast to beat out Shibusawa, the pencil-pushing Yakuza. Seeing as how he's a vampire and needs blood every 2 days, he's gonna send the city's worst getaway driver and Kiryu off to go collect the owner. Before the mission, though, they drop off Kiryu in town so that he can go eat entire menus worth of food for completion points, which the game insists upon shortening to CP and, like, maybe don't do that? Maybe don't say things like, you've earned more CP from side activities. Cyberpunk, don't fucking abbreviate that either. Well, I'm on my own bullshit right now. How about don't abbreviate the sole survivor to SS either? Once Kiryu is full of That was a Freudian slip. Once Kiryu is full of food, stray cash, and the ability to run longer, he gets the mission brief from Tachi about how the owner of the lot is named Makumura Makoto, a certain young blind woman that has been through enough hell to get a return customer bonus. She's currently in the hands of an ally, but that advantage will only last so long since Sonbori is the Omi Alliance's territory, and while it's one thing to fuck with the Tojo on their own turf, it's not the best idea to piss off yet another crime syndicate. Once in Sonbori, Oda shoots some hot lore dumps all over Kiryu's face. Namely that Tachi and he were in a gang a little while ago, and that's because of that gang activity that Tachi lost his hand. Kiryu eventually needs to babysit a phone alongside a former member of that gang. He runs a porn shop, but has a secret call room in the back. Kinda reminds me of a certain cyberpunk book, and it's room that no sound can escape from. But it's not nearly as cool as that. It's likely just used by gooners that pay extra to beat their meat into submission in the comfort of a cool side secret room. While in the masturbatorium, the two chat about the good old days when Tachi was gang leader. Turns out that he wasn't always the leader. He beat the fuck out of Oda to win that position, which made Oda's boner grow 3 sizes that day out of the love for this half-breed that can push his shit in harder than any other man he's ever met. Tachi growing up having to turn to crime to live apparently made him more badass than a human trafficker, which is why Oda insists that he leads their piss boy squad of delinquents. Oda returns and tries to downplay his raging erection for Tachi, but that doesn't matter. They get the girl from Sarah, who is holding her in safe captivity, with Sarah telling them to give Tachibana his regards before heading off. While on the highway, the trio are ambushed by the pencil-pushing Yakuza and his army of armed men, some with afros. Kiryu proceeds to kill like 30 men in the span of a few minutes or so, once again proving that Kiryu has never killed anybody ever. They then take shelter in some under-construction building, where Oda treats Makoto like a 50s housewife, which Kiryu, famed lover of women and their rights, doesn't abide by. This culminates in the reveal that Oda is a massive piece of shit who sold her into sexual slavery. Thankfully, Makoto got to stab the fucker. Shibusawa's men catch up back to them. Oda says that he'll hold them off and to tell Tachibana that he's secretly gay as fuck for him. While I do love homosexual love, I do not love the murder of innocent women for the sake of keeping up pining after your boss. So I'm glad that he gets ventilated, and from what I've read, Kiryu has a few nice words for the man decades later, while still holding Tachibana up in high esteem. You shouldn't have engaged in slavery, Oda! Kiryu and Makoto end up in a gaudy hotel, one that shows off the style of the era, style over substance, as the two talk about things. How Tachibana has changed since she last saw him a decade ago. How she had been in Osaka, Sonbori being a district in it, because he had said that's where he was going. But now he's a 25-year-old real estate, empire-building, handicapped vampire, and she's a blind former sex slave masseuse. So, they've both changed a lot in the previous decade. Reminds me of how I've changed in the last decade. Hell, I've changed multiple times even. When my birth giver died in 2016, that was the first major one. And then when my old man died in 2023, that changed me too. Like the siblings, I don't think I've changed for the better, but I've tried to do what I can despite how much I've had to endure. Like, two of my parents, their mother killed herself. She couldn't handle trying to live in a foreign land, speaking a foreign language. This left Makoto alone, to fend for herself, and she ended up running off to try and find her brother. In her desire to be reunited with her brother, she tried to meet with as many people that spoke Chinese as she could. This naivete for a young woman in a major city, to go with men on her own, eventually led to Oda, who would go on to sell her not a year less than when he and Tachibana would meet. The circumstances of all of this are unlikely, but the very human causes of all these problems stick with me. She's unfortunately a woman stuck in a story about the world of violent men. While she eventually will try and have some agency, she's a vision-impaired woman that can't bench press a tiger. Her resolve, though, to be with her brother and eventually avenge him, everybody can understand that. Kiryu helps her, tells her that life in the dark can be hard, but he can help her make the first steps. She steals her resolve to meet with her brother, something that I can't even force myself to do in the real world. He dumps her off with the hobo he stayed the night with. Tachi can't be reached at the moment, and he takes off to try and find him. Turns out that his whack-ass kidneys acted up again, and he needed the good suck to stay alive. So he's hooked up to his vampire machines when Kiryu meets with him again. The man apologizes for not being reachable before realizing that Oda let some beans out in the form of Makoto's connection to Tachibana. Kiryu explains what went down. Tachi assumes Oda is dead, and at no point does Kiryu explain that Oda wanted to make out with Tachi sloppy style. Like, Kiryu and Makoto, he blames himself for this mess, and the people that have gotten hurt in the process. And the worst part is, he's not even the wrongest kinda. Like, the empty lot, that's not his fault. Fleeing China to become a criminal in Japan and in the process leaving behind his mother and sister, yeah, that kinda is his fault. Tachi goes on about how being a half-breed made members of both groups hate him. So instead of a cool bonus to charisma like a half-elf would get, he instead got saliva all over him and his sister whenever they'd go to the theater in China. The other moviegoers just spitting thick loogies all over them as soon as the lights went out. He had reached a point of nihilism, of despair, in the criminal underworld of Japan. Not even a raging homo to fight alongside him was enough to make him desire life's bullshit. But hearing that his sister and mother had come to Japan, his lust for life came back as he wanted to be there for his little sister, and at that point, non-dead mother. Unfortunately, by the time that he tracked his grandpa down, the old geezer was dead, along with his mother, leaving just Makoto to try and find. He needed to find her, not just because of his love for her, but because of the dangers associated with the empty lot that she was bequeathed in their grandfather's will. With this in mind, he approached Kazama, who was more than willing to work with him. Dojima, at the head of the clan, with all the power and wealth running the plot, and being able to be the chief influencer of the project to build a big fuck-off skyscraper there, would become a monster that would cause the Tojo to collapse in on itself. Kazama told him to get into real estate using the information network he formed as part of his search for his sister. This would allow the firm to have a stronger legal claim over the empty lot than the Dojima family ever could. Kiryu finally puts two and two together, realizing this means that the entire real estate business was Kazama's plotting. I've read that in Japan, restating shit that people say helps show that you're paying attention, which is partially why all the snakes from Metal Gear do this, but it also helps the audience understand things if they were, say, preventing suicide over text while trying to pay attention to the game. I'll be playing a cutscene here because it's just too good not to. There's so much here that I can feel just as he can.
ただ妹は家族を捨てた私を恨んでいるかもしれません。数日前セルさんから妹は目が見えないと知らされた時、私は兄と名乗らない方がいいと思いました。
今はそう思っていないってことか。
あなたが私に聞かせてくれた牧村誠という女性はやはり私が記憶する妹でした。彼女が蒼天堀にいた理由も私を探すためだった。ずっとこんな私を探してくれていたんです。
立花、
桐生さん、私は妹にシャオチャオに会いたいです。今の私はそのためだけに生きながらえています。もう二度と逃げたくありません。
もうすぐ会える。彼女はあんたを恨んでなんかいねえ。だが今もあんたの助けが必要だ。
I've known little more than loss in my life. I was placed into CPS because of my caregiver's inability to function as a human being. The day that she died, I did not feel as he did upon learning of his own mother's death. It was a mix of relief that she could never directly harm me again, through either trying to blackmail me or through her choices reflecting poorly on me, but also relief that her suffering was over. In the same manner that when my old man died, one of the few things my uncle could muster to say was that at least his suffering was over. Like her, he died a drug addict that sold himself for money to afford his addictions. Addictions that his parents refused to acknowledge. Like Tachi, I was separated from my family members one by one, but out of choice on my part, to not watch them slowly kill themselves. When he said that, meeting his sister again, calling her by her Chinese name, hell, that's the only reason he's hung on for so long. I get it. I understand it. In my life, I have prevented the suicides, thus far, of 147 people. I'm good at it because I know what it's like to not have much, if anything, to live for. But I stay alive because I have a few people that I care about. Nothing else in life is worth tolerating the pain that life brings. Love is the only reason to keep going. That love grows more precious with each death, each separation. I'm doing this project out of the love for the idea of my old man. Despite everything that he did, there are timelines that could have existed where we had a lasting parent and child relationship. But between his inability to accept responsibility and my standing up for myself, finally, it never worked out. The two eventually end up contending with an assassin from China, who puts 2 rounds into Kiryu. Tachi realizes that this is the man that killed the dude in the empty lot, the murder that Kiryu was framed for. Tachibana threatens to kill himself if the man doesn't let Kiryu live. Since he's only paid to bring in Tachi alive, the two leave while Kiryu is left to recover in the care of the local Chinese until eventually waking up and speaking with the Elder. The old fart explains more backstory, that the reason the plot of land even exists is that the grandfather had sold off all his other surrounding land after World War II so that his daughter might one day find him and somehow, via knowing about the land. Anyway, it's because of the grandpa that all of this ended up happening in a bout of dramatic irony. Life sure just fucks you over sometimes. All he wanted to do was be reunited with his daughter, but ended up causing her to kill herself, his granddaughter to get sold into sexual slavery as well as getting shot, and then his grandson ending up getting tortured and killed, all because one middle-aged man wanted more wealth and power. After reading it back to myself, I'm like, man, yeah, the family went through a lot of shit. Chen does point this out, that it's the Yakuza who directly caused most of this to happen, and as they're speaking, Tachi's likely getting worked over by the Dojima family, who are known for their expertise in torture. Sort of like the Legion in Skyrim, it's one of the first hints of their inner darkness, being the torture chambers. Chen wishes to mobilize against the Dojima, but knows that if he does so, little Asia would be tolerated no longer. Kiryu promises to be he and his people's champion, to be the one to bring fire and war to the Dojima family. Chen is happy and tells him to go babysit Makoto until they can locate Tachi for Kiryu to rescue. This eventually leads into the situation we saw before with Nishiki, how the Dojima are defying the interim second chair sitter's orders to stop being cunts since Tachi paid a fortune for Kiryu's safety. Not wanting to cover the same stuff again too much, I'll just skip to Tachi being tortured. He's getting his shit wrecked, namely his digits, as the weasel tries to get him to talk via pain. But Tachi is truly built different, and the loss of toes is not enough to make him give in to some cunt that only signed up because he likes to hurt people. He pokes at Kuze that he's gonna be seen as a fuck-up if he doesn't get the info. The weasel needs to be told by Kuze not to kill him since they can't extract info out of a dead man. Wise for Kuze to understand. Maybe not so wise to say out loud as Tachi eggs the cunt to hit him once more. This time with the sledgehammer that has claimed more tootsies than a kid on Halloween. Tachi can only let out a pained laugh after ensuring that he'd never have to talk. Kiryu and Nishiki break in right after this, after duking it out ape style with the help of a shotgun because fuck Kuze's use of lackeys. Tachibana has the last conversation of his life with Kiryu before succumbing to his injuries. And yet again, here is the whole cutscene because I can't not show it.
Tachibana, すまね。遅くなった。
謝ることありませんよ。桐生さん。
おい、立花。よせ。妹がすぐそこまで来てるんだ。ずっと会いたかったんだろう。今連れてきてやる。錦頼む。誠をここに。分かった。
もう間に合いません。
立花。
桐生さん。ラオグよ。操ってるのは堂島宗平です。
なんだと。
クゼが言ってました。すべての人は堂島が引いています。風間さんを排除するためにあなたに殺しの濡れ衣
を。おい、立花。なんだ。
こんなことにこん
立花、お前の妹は必ず俺が守る。約束する。絶対に守るからな。
At this point, he is dead, and the next cutscene should be saved for Makoto's section, so I'm just gonna talk about Tachi. Tachibana was a man that grew up in pain and misery, who hardened himself against it, and in the end, died for the sister that he loved more than anything else. The sister that gave his life meaning. He and Kiryu both taught each other much. His handling of Yakuza politics, his ability to keep going despite everything, his morality, to an extent, enforcement of it, it spurs Kiryu on, and he grows to embody many of those skills and traits. Without the death of Tachibana, most of the series could not have happened. His death and the impact it had on Kiryu would one day cause a series of dominoes to fall, resulting in the dissolution of not just the Tojo clan, but also the Omi alliance. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That's a story for another dragon-adjacent man to experience likely 3 years from now after I catch up on the rest of these games. Which, good time to say, I might skip 3 through 5. I know 3 might get the Kiwami treatment though. If it does, I'll play, but I'm still on the fence since I don't want to endure the least polished games. Anyway, with that, I will conclude the section on our favorite half-breed vampire real estate agent that is also a cyborg. If you can find me another one, please do. It's a very narrow category, and I love to see what there is out there this guy is such a very narrow there's nobody like him. Kazama's section is the one that gave me the most problems in terms of how to cover him. He's got so little screen time, yet he impacts the story like few other characters. I aim to only have coverage of when they're on screen or the story is relating to what they're doing, but this dude set up most of the plot right before he was sent into prison for running a gambling den. It's said that the 3 LTs might be responsible for his time spent behind bars, but that did nothing to stop his plans from coming to fruition. I guess in a way he's like my old man. He's a father that haunts the narrative despite having very little screen time. Hell, he's a foil in a way. Kazama was heralded as the best of the best, for not only the Dojima clan, but also for anybody in the Tojo in general. And while he was the more proactive of the 2 kids that my grandparents had, he was still a massive fuck-up in nearly every regard. The positions are flipped for he and I regarding how Kiryu and Kazama relate. Not that Kiryu is a fuck-up, but I'm generally speaking of the golden boy of the family. Graduated with honors, no arrests, didn't turn to prostitution to fund my drug abuse. So in a way, I can relate to how Kiryu idolizes his father up until later in the series, for while he still loves him, he begins to see some of the flaws of the man that likely loved him the most. I often don't feel as though I was unconditionally loved. I was conceived solely because my old man wanted a kid, and he convinced his slightly younger, equally drug-addled girlfriend to get knocked up by sleeping with a bunch of his relatives. To give you an idea of how that situation is kinda fucked, not all of them were single, and not all of the single men were in open relationships. I'm both the prodigal child of my family, as well as a dark secret in a way. I wasn't able to go to the family reunions without causing a stir, yet my grades were the highest out of my entire generation, and I was showered with pride in what amounts to bribes in the form of new video games. But that isn't what I needed. I needed a stable, loving family, which is something I never got to have, and to a degree, Kiryu didn't have that either. While Kazama loved Kiryu very much, as far as I can tell, he wasn't the shining beacon of honor that he pictured him as. Kazama had more blood on his hands than damn near anybody else in Kiryu's life, having gone to where he was in both the Dojima clan as well as the Tojo in general via the liberal application of bullets to chests. His lifestyle was something out of a John Woo flick, while Kiryu's ascent was more along the lines of an errant samurai trying to make up for his master's indiscretions. More than once, he would eventually try to go on and live a civilian life. Kazama is the man that Kiryu most looked up to, the man that he joined the Yakuza to try and be more like. But as he experiences everything that is involved in the lifestyle, I feel as though Kiryu comes to an understanding that he doesn't want to be like his dad. While my old dad had some traits that were worthwhile, he was pretty good with directions, and he did get clean for a long time before he was pressured into getting back into stimulants by an addy-addicted middle-aged man who lived with his mother. I realized fairly early on that he was lacking. He had no sustainable long-term goals, and even when Social Security fucked up and gave him like 50 grand, he managed to fuck that up as well. Didn't pay me back, kept doing drugs, tried to get land, but the land was massively overpriced. Couldn't even keep a truck operational because he cheaped out on the spark plugs. This section isn't following the story as it happened, because it doesn't need to. He only shows up at the very tail end, and still, it's more about how it relates to Kiryu than how it expands on he himself. Kiryu realizes that he needs to get back into the Yakuza, but advance and grow on his own terms, not those set by or represented by the man that partially raised him. In the end, we all need to learn to grow beyond our parents, become better than them, and at times, make up for the sins that they have committed over the years. I desire to do as many charitable acts as I can in my life, funded through donations I get eventually, in part because I still desire to be the best of my family. I want to show that, despite everything, despite all the heartache and pain, that there's no excuse to not be a good person. That we aren't defined by the people that forced us into existence or raised us. I want to be there for people in ways that nobody was for me, or my old man. Abuse and neglect are cyclical. He continued the cycle, and while he wasn't outright abusive, like my birth giver was, he still massively fucked up by not only not stopping her, they broke up because she cheated on him. The fucking irony, man. But also by never once showing me what a good person was like. Also, little fun fact, he found out that she was cheating on him when they went to go see a Jim Carrey movie, and he carried a hatred for Jim Carrey for the rest of his days. Fucking... He at best was tolerable to most people, outside of those that are transphobic or old-fashioned like some bitch that gave him shit for having tattoos when he was working at McDonald's. But joke's on her, because she's just as dead as he is now. I refuse to continue the cycle. I want to create a positive feedback where I can help ensure that the younger members of my generation and my family can do good deeds and not suffer for it, where they can live not in the shame of poverty, where they can help those stuck in a rut improve the lives around them with what time they have left on this bitch of an earth. After my old man's death, I don't have much hope for a brighter future beyond making things more comfortable for people before they die. But I'm burdened by the corpses of more parents than most people will ever have. Just as Kazuma Kiryu needed to cast off the expectations that were thrust upon him for being the adoptive son of Shintaro Kazama, I too need to cast off the limiting expectations put upon me by my family members, both living and dead. Now we're on to the big man himself, the future Dragon of Dojima, before then heading on to Majima's most impactful characters. Thus far, I've told the stories loosely of the other characters in the order that they happened. This video is an experiment in a different way of handling story, mostly spurred on by the fact that there are two protagonists, which really messed up how I handle things. I figured that each one had too much to say about them and the characters that impacted them, so I'd better cover the characters first, and then relate how they impacted them in more detail in sections afterwards. This may result in the story being hard to follow if you hadn't played the game before, but I can honestly say that the story is both dense enough that even I'm missing some details, but also that there's more about the characters' places in the story than it is about the story themselves. In a similar way to how I learned about the JoJo series by learning about characters and concepts, but not how the stories unfolded, I guess you're experiencing the story in that manner because of my desire to experiment. Let's hope that experiment is worthwhile, because now I'm on to the man of the 69-hour-long playthrough that I had. And yes, I will in fact find humor in the fact that the game about the felonious fistfuckers took me the sex number of hours to finish. Which isn't to say that Majima is lacking in being a dope-as shit dude. His story touches me a bit more in certain regards, but since the series is mostly about Kiryu, I decided to present his well-toned bowling ass first. Whether or not he's bowling on the behalf of soup, or for the acquisition of such a moist meal, who's to say? But at the end of the day, he can stand tall with his cock strutting out, as he becomes a better person across this grand journey. Kiryu begins the story as kind of a shithead, collecting money on the side for a dude that isn't tied to the clan, a money lender. Though through this work, he beats the fuck out of some salaryman who wanted to live beyond his means, something that my old man could relate to since he died in massive debt, though a good deal of that was medical. Eventually, Kiryu ends up stuck in the middle of a plot so far beyond him that it crosses multiple cities, gets a lot of people dead or arrested, ends up dethroning his boss, and ends up with the narrator for JoJo's bizarre adventure at the head of the Tojo clan. A lot to have been involved with at the tender age of 20. I first played this game when I was around the same age actually, if not slightly older. But even then I could feel the similarities between us. Like a love for minigames, and the ability to lift most other humans, though, due to injuries, I can no longer lift people that weigh 300 or more pounds. But one day, I'll relocate 2 of my limbs and be able to deadlift plus-sized lads again. During his journey, he makes new friends and appreciates his old ones a bit more. But mostly the new ones. As I said before, the cracks in the relationship he has with his oath brother Nishiki shows off during the story of this game, helping to make what happens in the original game more meaningful. Let's begin a bit with him, relating back to how he helps mold Kiryu into the Tojo clan's plot device over the series. Through Nishiki, Kiryu is able to see almost a foil in some ways, where Kiryu starts out as just a dumb thug that needs his more savvy brother to help guide him in the underworld beyond just what to hit really hard. He eventually evolves into a man that, through the hardships of both civil and clan wars, comes out far ahead of where he began. His prestige is almost on par with his father's. His battle prowess is nearly unmatched, and he has accumulated enough financial acumen to ensure self-sustainability, at least until the taxes that Majima helped put into place came into effect, and he lost a good deal of his assets. In the beginning, Nishiki tried to explain how to get ahead by being a kiss-ass, but Kiryu just needed to kick some ass to get to where he needed to be. Nishiki just can't keep up with him. Kiryu is a monster in human form, a dragon amongst floundering fish. And for that, Nishiki will one day resent his beloved brother, but for now, through Nishiki, Kiryu is able to get some degree of savvy while realizing that the safe and slow method isn't his style. He needs to be brash and dumb and blunt. He's the protagonist of a series that rewards that behavior, with his villains often acting more like Nishiki, at least until characters like a certain pants-stealing Osakan crop up as legitimate threats for him to come out of retirement for. Next up, we've got the man that helps cut him into better shapes. Just as Vivek attempted to do so for his people, so too did Kuze unintentionally end up in the position as the King of Hell, the man of the underworld that would act as the guardian for its deepest pits. One who would keep out Kiryu first out of pride, and then, well, he still says it's pride, but in the way he does it to make sure that Kiryu is ready for this shit. Ready to go up against another potential dragon. Kuze is the past of the Yakuza. Brash, violent, direct. With honor that can be best described as an idealized version of what a lot of older Japanese material would possess. uncritical of authority, might making right, the leader needing to be a meathead capable of winning battles, not by being smarter, but by never staying down. Kuze doesn't seem to see the contradiction. The man that he works for, Sohei Dojima, did not gain his prestige and position through his own grit and mettle. No, he coasted off the successes of his underling Kazama, building himself off the mountain of bodies created by Kiryu's father instead of off of any earned reputation or actions of his own. To say that Kuze is what's wrong with the old guard is a bit of a misleading notion. While yes, he's part of the problem, he's also more so a byproduct or just another cog in the wheel. The way the Tojo is set up, and indeed most organizations, is in a top-down manner. Power grows the further up the pyramid you get, with each descending layer getting less and less power, as well as things like income and prestige. The hierarchy is maintained via violence, as most hierarchies through history have. It's little more than something like feudalism, which seems to be how humans like to organize themselves over and over again. Time is a flat, fucking circle. You can see it in how we're starting to see small pockets of control exerted by tech bros and the like. The loose grasp on anarchist theory that anarcho-capitalists possess, leading to situations not so similar to Andrew Ryan's Rapture. The ideology of a government assistance leech that hated her own sex, dying in hypocrisy, and followed by more sweaty out-of-shape trolls than those that follow Malakath. You know, I didn't wake up today thinking that I'd compare Ayn Rand to a Daedric prince, but here we are. Anyway, Kuze tested Kiryu's might, his resolve, and my ability to tolerate grinding in Japanese games. Within Tachibana, we find the man that helped build up Kiryu's quiet dignity. That is, when he's not smashing up street thugs with bicycles and shouting like a fucking evil ape. The way he held himself had his convictions for the betterment of another, which could be read as merely self-satisfaction at their own sense of morality and honor being appeased. It's something that we see in Kiryu over time as the series goes on. He's never truly happy until he can dedicate himself to the kids under his care, in the same way that we can only see Tachi happy when he is about to see his sister, or at least when he believes he will be able to do so. Just as tragedy befalls the siblings despite their earnestness and just wanting to be reunited, an unambiguously positive thing, so too will Kiryu face similar tragedies across his entire life. It's in this game that he sees that a good cause and a chipper outlook aren't enough to get by in life. He needed to become a beast, a monster, a dragon. In Tachibana's death, he would find his voice of rage and ruin, the inner fire that would turn him into the worm that he was born to be. Not a scaled being laying atop a hoard of ill-gotten loot, but as a benevolent force of violence and wisdom, an irrepressible miracle in human form. His ascent towards heavenly virtues is one marked by violence. He may not have killed 6 billion demons. He may have trashed 6 billion goons. Time to reflect on what killed Abraham Lincoln. Daddy issues. Kazama, as I just covered in the previous section, so this is going to be a lot shorter, is his dad that he tried to aspire to until he realized that aspiring to be the ideal of him wouldn't get him to where he needs to be. He needs to believe in himself and live in accordance with his own values and methods. In the end, Kiryu needed to gain something for himself that he hadn't yet had. And that missing piece? It was faith in oneself. Well, I guess it would be nice if I could touch your body. I know not everybody has got a body like you. Oh, but I gotta think twice before I give my heart away. And I know all the games you play, 'cause I play them too. Oh, but I need some time off from that emotion. Time to pick my heart up off the floor. Oh, when that love comes down without out devotion. Well, it takes a strong man, baby, but I'm showing you the door, 'cause I gotta have faith. Oh, you have faith, 'cause I gotta have faith, the faith. I gotta have faith, the faith, the faith. Baby, I know you're asking me to stay. Say please, please, please to go away. You say I'm giving you the blues. Maybe you mean every word you say. Can't help but think of yesterday and another who tied me down to lover boy rules before this river becomes an ocean, before you throw my heart back on the floor. Oh, baby, I've reconsidered my foolish notion. Well, I need someone to hold me, but I'll wait for something more. Yes, I gotta have faith. I gotta have faith, because I gotta have faith, the faith, the faith. I gotta have faith, the faith, the faith. Ooh!
Whoa!
I'll just have to wait, 'cause I gotta have faith. I gotta have faith. I got to have faith before this river becomes an ocean, before you throw my heart back on the floor. Baby, I've reconsidered my foolish notion. Well, I need someone to hold me, but I'll wait for something more. 'Cause I gotta have faith. I gotta have faith, because I've gotta have faith, the faith, the faith. I gotta have faith, the faith, the faith. And with that, it's time to move on to the second half of this video, in which I discuss Goro Majima's retinue of rebellious renegades. It helps teach this, comparatively, old dog some new tricks, like how to get up into people's shit. However, I have had to make, I believe addendum is the right word for it. I'm going off script because there isn't a script right now. Because of how things went this month, I've had to split the video in half. So this is gonna be the first half of this video is the first half of a bigger video. I didn't want to have to try to upload like a 3 to 4 hour long video. I want to make sure I got something out at the end of this month. I'm hoping I get this out before the end of this month. Second video should be out a week later. So I'm just I'm gonna do my sign off. Trans rights are human rights. Don't steal ducks from ponds. They're awful people.